Are we good? Well, welcome everyone tonight to this meeting of the Committee of the Whole of Shippensburg Area School District School Board. We really only have one item on the agenda tonight for the Committee of the Whole meeting, and that is a update on our ongoing construction projects, I believe. Well,
SiteLogic and EI.
yeah, so, right. SiteLogic and EI are here to update us, and I'll just let them or Bill take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Goetz. We have a pretty extensive presentation from SiteLogic with EI to review kind of all the work that we've done to this point at the design phase at the building, and kind of go over some reality numbers within the projects that we have going on. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Melissa from SiteLogic.
Great, thank you, everybody. I just want to make sure you can hear me. Before we get started and I dive into the presentation, I just want to take a moment and introduce everyone that's joining me tonight. From SiteLogic, we have Mike Arnold, who is our Vice President of Operations. He typically operates out of our Western PA office, but he is here and he is participating behind the scenes on a lot of our Shippensburg discussions. So you can put his name and face together. Andrew Zwally, who is our Director of Government Affairs and Special Projects, is here to talk a little bit about the grant advocacy as promised. And then from EI, we have Adam Kerr and Ann Thong. Just wanted to make everybody aware of who was in attendance tonight.
And Melissa, I'd just like to note, Mrs. Luffy is here when we get to the high school discussion. She's able to share kind of her opinions as well.
Great. So let's get started. Oh, sorry. I just want to make sure I know who's driving the presentation. So this is our agenda for this evening. It's pretty high level. Tonight we'll be discussing the design process and the different phases that we'll be moving through as this project develops. We'll touch on those facility priorities that we've been discussing, as well as the schematic designs. EI will cover design in that phase. I will give the budget estimate, and then we can talk next steps for what's going on at the high school and middle school. As we discussed earlier, there are different phases to the design process, and these are simplified here for you: the design phase, the bid phase, the construction phase, and the closeout phase. Right now, we are in the design phase, and that is broken up into three very distinct pieces. It's the programmatic and schematic phase, the design development, and the construction document and design. That is what comprises the design phase. Last time I was here, we talked about how as we transition from one phase to the next, we'll be looking for guidance and direction and input from the board. That is where we are tonight. So we are moving from that first schematic phase into the second design development phase. What you can see on the screen in front of you is that 9/25 board meeting. That is kind of that board action that we're looking for to move from one phase to the next. That was the input that we had requested of you before, the promise that we made with you about how we would move through this project. So I just wanted to note that date going forward. Questions on the screen? No? Okay. Let's start with those middle school and high school facility priorities. This was the culmination of SiteLogic's facility assessment and EI's study looking at your facilities and moving through your buildings, specifically at the high school and the middle school. There were facility maintenance items that were identified. You can see those on the list. They are the unbolded items. So things like those rooftop and air handling units, the electrical distribution and switch gear. We're looking at the exterior masonry facade restoration, aluminum window replacements, flooring and other finishes throughout the facility, toilet room upgrades, natatorium wall repair, building controls, and some site work. In addition to that, and at that February 27th board meeting, this board also was interested in taking a look at additional programming needs within the high school. And priorities assigned at that meeting were looking at that music and stage area for potential additions, STEM and FCS lab room additions, student service office or SGI additions, looking at a rear secure vestibule, as well as gymnasium seating expansion and group toilet renovation. At the middle school was that parent drive and bus loop, which we've been talking about. That was something that was prioritized during the first phase of construction. But beyond that, after those building walkthroughs, there was a band LGI addition that was under consideration, as well as support service spaces and some minor office renovations. And Adam will discuss the schematic design.
All right, good evening, everybody. Adam Kerr with EI Associates. So we'll run through the plans. Melissa captured those verbally. We wanted to show you what that looks like graphically. So we will start at the middle school. We had a number of meetings with staff and some administration to walk through the needs. So as mentioned, what we're looking at and what we proposed is a 1,600 square foot music and band room expansion, which will also serve as, a flexible, large group instruction space, again, to accommodate additional programs and have some flexibility for the school. We are showing 4 additional small group instruction spaces inside of one of the existing courtyards and a couple office spaces that are part of that infill addition. And as Melissa mentioned, we're also showing some minor renovations to the admin suite, and obviously we would have MEP systems to support those additions and renovations. So, and just a key, actually, let me back up real quick. I can show it here too. So the darker blue color, are additions, whether that's what we call an infill addition at the courtyard, or, an addition to the exterior of the building at the music. So, and the light blue color is more renovation. So in terms of all the graphics, that just kind of keys you into what's being shown here. So on the left-hand side, you can see the courtyard, and you can see we're showing those 4 new SGI spaces. They are, flexible. We're showing dividing walls so that there can be down to 4 spaces or 2 larger spaces. And again, we're showing a couple offices in that infill addition. And then you can see on the right-hand side, that is the music room / LGI addition at the 1,600 square feet that we've proposed. And again, a couple minor, renovations with the workroom and so forth there in administration suite. So moving to the high school, as Melissa mentioned, what we're showing is gymnasium seating expansion, which is sort of a hybrid renovation / infill addition. We are showing FCS STEM classroom addition, the music classroom and stage storage addition. And as we mentioned, there's interior finishes throughout most of where these renovated areas will occur. And some building envelope improvements, again, sort of on that asset protection side. We are showing a new secure vestibule at the front and rear entrance. And again, systems to support each of these renovated or new areas. So a couple enlarged views, what you're seeing on the left-hand side there, that is the music addition with a vocal lab. We have some storage and some additional kind of music program space to allow for flexibility there next to the storage. But that all occurs on the rear side of the auditorium space. Moving to the right-hand side, what we're showing there, those are the 2 new FCS labs and the large group instruction and STEM labs. kind of looking straight back out through this corridor here is where we're proposing those. We also have a fair amount of office spaces and conference spaces shown as an addition, kind of shoehorning around the existing portion of the building back here. And that, again, that lighter blue color, we're showing some renovated spaces to accommodate a conference room and additional office space. So looking at the gym and towards the front of the building, again, what we're showing is sort of this hybrid infill addition / renovation in an effort to accommodate additional seating. One of the things we heard a couple months ago from the district was priority being the additional seating at the gym. We did look into numerous options, and our team, in working with SiteLogic, what we determined was we feel that this is the most economical way to add seating capacity in the gym at the end of the court. So what we're showing is, that, again, that area that's in light blue would be a renovated space, and then there is an addition portion in that dark blue, and essentially we're going to slide the corridor over and use some of that existing courtyard space in an effort to accommodate that additional seating. So the image on the right-hand side, as you can see, that's sort of a cross-section looking at what we're proposing. So it's, you know, there's some work involved there. It's a trickier spot in the building, but again, with where the gym's located, we feel that this is the best option in terms of cost to provide seating in the gymnasium. What we're showing in the lobby is the potential for a small concessions area out in the lobby that would service, you know, events in the gymnasium. And we are showing a new secure entrance vestibule off the front of the building. And I don't want to forget to mention the rear, we're showing the top of that image right there, we're showing some restroom renovations as well as a faculty space, again, with a secure entry on the rear of the high school as well. So moving to the site work, just to provide, and K&W is not here this evening, but just to provide an update on the overall layout. What we're showing here, you know, is over at the middle school. You know, this shows the school parent drive, which yields about an additional 178 parking spaces total, but an additional 50 or so spaces. I think it's 49 spaces. And it accommodates up to 110 cars in terms of stacking or queuing on this side now. You can see that kind of long drive leading to the middle school parking there. So, and what you can see, and unfortunately I can't point at it, but you can see the bus loop that now, you know, perfectly aligns across Eberly from the high school to the middle school. So that is the bus loop we've incorporated there to accommodate flow of buses and drop off and sort. So these are just a couple enlarged views. We are showing some site work to, one, accommodate the new additions at the high school. So there is some realignment and reworking of spaces. It's about a net zero change what's shown on this plan currently, but it does alter a little bit of the flow and workings around the additions there at the rear of the high school. And again, you can sort of see there in the front that bus drop-off area and kind of looping back down to Eberly instead of the parking lot continuing in front of the high school. And again, this shows the middle school loop with a long drop-off drive for middle school parents and the additional parking, again, a plus or minus 50 spaces overall for the campus. One minor note, we do show sort of that dotted line being shown from that middle school parking lot area would be during any kind of events over at the stadium, that would be a pathway for visitors to use this parking lot and walk over to the stadium.
Good evening. As it was mentioned, I'm Andrew Zwally. Been in front of you before, but I'm happy to be back tonight to talk a little bit about the grant that was submitted, or rather resubmitted, The board took action in June to approve a resolution that ultimately allowed the district to apply for a multimodal grant through the Pennsylvania Department of Community Economic Development, specifically the Commonwealth Financing Authority, which is just their clearinghouse for all grant programs that are administered through the Department of Community Economic Development. So the state funds requested for this, for the parent loop is $1,127,068, and the local funded portion is, as you can see there, $606,000. That represents a 35% local match. That is 5% above the minimum that's required. The reason why we chose to go above the minimum was to show that the district was invested in completing this project, that they were, had the resources, had the funding, and were willing to commit to it. So that was part of the rationale for that. The total amount that we requested is more than the 2022 submission. That's partially because there were some things added in redesign, specifically aligning the bus loop from the high school to the middle school, and some additional crosswalking and pedestrian safety measures that were included. So that's why that amount is slightly higher. So just wanted to speak a little bit tonight about the next steps that are involved in this. This grant program is incredibly political and requires a great deal of advocacy. So that's kind of what I was asked to present on tonight. And a lot of the things you see under next steps are things that we did last year in preparation for getting the grant funded, but ultimately came up short. Part of that was last year they received the most amount dollar-wise for this grant program and had the least amount they had been able to give out in the last 5 years. Those totals are based upon gas taxes and other taxing measures related to transportation. So again, that just is one thing to keep in mind as we pursue this. But the next steps include meeting with our local legislators to explain the project benefits and the impact. Again, that's going to be something coordinated between your state rep, in this case for this building, for this project is Rich Irvin, and your state senator, which in this case is Doug Mastriano. So we're going to work to coordinate the district schedule with their schedule to set up a meeting to walk them through the project, explain how this fits into your overall program, the other things that you're considering here at the high school, but also across the street at the middle school, and the work that has been done to date specifically to the middle school. So what does that look like? That looks like letters of support, phone calls to from you all to the legislators, to get them on board. That may mean ultimately letters of support from the community, from various community groups advocating for this, a PTA, the teachers, to talk about the safety benefits involved with this, with these improvements, because that's ultimately going to be part of the driving factor with getting it funded. And then you'll see down here sort of when we anticipate these things to take place. Those meetings are going to take place in October, work to get them scheduled the next couple weeks. And then ultimately we estimate that the grant would be approved in November. However, last year they unfortunately delayed grant approvals until March. I don't expect that to happen this time around. That was more due to the fact that it was an election year and things were delayed in Harrisburg. So I don't anticipate that being the case. I anticipate them to be back on their traditional schedule. So that's what you see outlined there below. So happy to take questions now specific to this, but also happy to take questions later as well.
I'll ask a question.
Sure.
Is it only the legislators who are, their district is, this school lies in their district that are probably worth contacting, or are there others we should contact as well?
Ultimately, the most important people that we need to contact are the legislators that specifically have the high school, middle school in their district. Because Shippensburg is split between two counties, that's sort of how the lines are split for your state legislative delegation. But ultimately, those are the most important, because the way that it works in Harrisburg is there's a list of all the projects. The four caucuses, the House Democrats, the House Republicans, Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, they get their list, they prioritize their list, and so our goal is to get your local legislative delegation to prioritize this project and ultimately get it prioritized on, what gets funded.
So you would like us to do some of that contact?
Yes, there's a certain aspect of it that will be handled, we will coordinate, lead those efforts, but a certain aspect will be handled within the administration. But I can walk through and give some next steps as far as what, would be acceptable, for the board if they wish.
Yeah, I'm thinking there are some even student groups at the high school here that are, I'm blanking on the name, right? What's Mr. Martin's Student Activism Club? They may be interested in doing some work with this as well, because, at least for me, when I hear from students, that has more of an impact than some grumpy adult. So I think it would be good to sort of put this bug in their ear as well.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, the legislators want to see the importance of this. They want to see the benefit to the community, and I think that's that's certainly what we outlined in the application.
I'm also certain that if several board members would reach out to Doug Mastriano and Rob Kaufman, both individuals went to the Capitol to kind of advocate for the Costa Academy to receive $1.5 million in our CAP grant. They would do the same for a parent loop if we all reached out to them as well.
Absolutely.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, absolutely.
In your experience, assuming you do this a lot, letters, phone calls, emails, personal visits, all of the above, what do you recommend?
All of the above. I think ultimately our goal is to get your state legislators, in this case, Rich Irvin and Doug Mastriano, to submit a letter to their legislative leadership. What does it take to get that letter? It's certainly going to, in my opinion, we need to meet with them, preferably here, so that they can see it. We can walk around, we can show them. I think last year we actually had legislators here when it was dismissal time, so they were able to witness a bit of the chaos.
Then drop off kids.
Yeah. They were able to witness a bit of the chaos that ensues at the end of the school day, and that was really beneficial. Unfortunately, the lines were redrawn and politics prevailed, but I think this time around, that would be absolutely the number one priority. I think phone calls and emails are the easiest way to get in contact.
So you say this starts in October, Andrew?
Yes.
And is
We would work to coordinate a meeting of the various groups to occur in October.
and the instructions for we had talked about you providing some instructions so
absolutely.
I can get to the board members.
Yeah, I will.
As easy as possible for them to do.
Yeah, and I'll make it very clear of the best ways to get in touch with each of those individuals, and then we can kind of work from there. I think trying to coordinate two of their schedules, the administration's availability, I think, and when it makes sense to be on campus is, a top priority. So once we get that locked in, I'll be able to share that with the board if they wish to attend as well.
And that information that you'll send to us will include elevator speech kind of bulleted,
Absolutely.
very simple overview of the ask.
Yeah, I actually have a draft letter of support written in your all voice, so that I can share that, and that way it's easy for you to doctor up and submit as you wish.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. Until we have a couple technical issues sorted out with the presentation, I'd like to invite Mrs. Luffy up here to just give her thoughts about, the discussions that we've been having about the high school project.
Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to say that I'm very excited about all of the ideas that the organization has brought forth to us for the high school and the betterment of our students. And I'm looking forward to the opportunities that our students will have with the programming that has been shared with us. I think the FCS additions out back, along with the STEM and the LGI classrooms, are a wonderful addition to our learning environment, as well as the gym addition or expansion is a very unique opportunity for us to get all of our students together in one location. Unfortunately, with the size of our student population continuing to grow, we have outgrown our building with our gymnasium and as well as our auditorium. So it would be a facility that we could house our entire student population together, and so it would be a great asset to our community.
Mrs. Levy, before you go, I know asking a building principal to identify what upgrades they most prefer is like asking them to pick their favorite child.
Right.
You know, of those areas, you know, do you have a preference that the board might want to hear? You know, if we're not able to do all of them at one time.
I would definitely say the 2 secure entrances at both the front and the back of the building, although they're not big ticket items, I would say that they are probably at the top of my list just because of the security factor. And then I would probably have to go with the gymnasium, the music, and then the FCS classrooms.
Thank you. And any questions for Mrs. Levy?
So I guess if they were in order, like the FCS versus like the music, like did you have a chronological order of importance of, because, you know, we talk about money and financial, like as far as like programs that impact every single student that goes through versus.
Right, so every single student has 2 full credits of gym class, so that's why I would say probably the gym would be at the top of my priority. I would probably say FCS would be a close second. Music, because of the number of students that it impacts. And although we're saying music, I would include drama with that. Many of you have seen some of our drama productions and are aware that the drama club ranges around 80 students. So it does impact a huge group of our students here. So while we say music and the band and the chorus, and that's about 100 students or so, I would also say the drama is a whole nother group of students that is represented when we talk about that project. So I would say that project.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on now to building your project and getting into our estimate. Before we actually kind of turn the page and dig into it, there's a couple things that I want you to think about how we've been thinking about your project. As these conversations have evolved and the designs have kind of been put forth and we've been discussing them, we've been very, very intentional about 2 things. Being very strategic about what we're looking at and how what is being proposed will affect your building. And we're being very surgical. And when we say that, we're saying we're being very surgical whenever we consider your budget. So we want to try to make the best decision, kind of aligning those 2 ideas when we approach your building. What we're looking at is really just a way to level set what we're seeing as far as the budget that was set forth. We're looking at the middle school addition and renovations. We understand that to be about $2 million all in for the additional programming needs that were there. This $2 million does not consider the middle school loop that we were just talking about. The high school asset protection and major addition renovations, the budget that was set by this board was $22.6 million. So all in, including the site work, is $24.6 million. Now, we did have to pull that middle school project into this consideration because of where it was landing with phase 1 and phase 2. It's kind of straddling these 2 phases, so we're pulling it forward. And that's what we're seeing with that site work, that last site work number. We should note that the funding that you're seeing for this budget does not consider the remaining funds from the middle school project. So we know that we have some funds that we can pull forth from that phase. Those are not accounted for in here, and neither are the grant monies that Andrew was just talking about.
I have a question. When you're saying pulling from the middle school, the money left over from the middle school project?
Left over, yes.
How much was that?
So that's a great question. And for those of you that couldn't hear it, Mr. Scott just asked, what is the dollar value that we can pull forward into that from the middle school project that was left over? That is to be determined. We just had those conversations with Christie, with EI, and K&W. We're still sorting through what those funds would be, and we hope to have those by the 25th, so that we'll have a clear idea.
Will that take away from the 2 million for the middle school?
Will not take away, it will be adding to the overall budget.
We got money left from the middle school, and we're gonna roll it over into this school.
Yes.
The next plan.
Yes,
And plus you want an additional 2 million for the middle school.
it will not be an additional 2 million. It'll just be the remaining funds from that first phase of construction at the middle school. So that is to be determined. You know, previously we had said it was going to be less than $1 million, but we didn't quite know where. So that's what we are really trying to hone in and figure out, is what that dollar value is that we can apply to this next phase, because we want to see that $24.6 million number grow a little bit.
Grow or decrease?
Yes, increase.
So that rollover, Fred, and the grant can make that budget a little bit higher. But, you know, due to the complexity of how we're trying to do these jobs and the different buckets that we have to make sure that we're paying for them correctly, so that when we get audited, there aren't any problems. You know, they have to sort through what invoices get into what bucket, and it just takes a little while to do that. And, you know, I think about a week or so, you know, we'll have a very good number that will, you know, be pulled over.
Sensing a little bit of confusion. When you say grow, you mean grow the amount of money that is available.
Yes,
So we're not growing the potential expenses. We're growing the potential amount of money that's available to use to build.
Okay.
That make sense, Fred?
It's expensive, $2 million, but you said you're gonna bring access, there's money extra over I'm just wondering, why wouldn't that decrease to $2 million?
Well, it allows for a bigger budget because there would be more money, I think is what she's saying.
Fred, when we roll through the rest of the project, I think it'll make more sense.
Yeah.
thank you. So what we're looking at here are a few options. And what I'd like to do is just take you through the base project scope on the left-hand side. What we're seeing are those middle school additions and renovations that we had talked about and that Adam had presented. And we're looking at that high school asset protection. We can talk about in detail what this is, but these are the major components of the next phase of construction. In addition to asset protection, there's also the major additions and renovations at the high school, which Mrs. Luffy was just speaking to. Then we have the site work. So the middle school loop, all of the site work that has to support the potential building additions and the landscaping and stormwater management that has to occur as well. On the right-hand side of the table, what you're seeing are two options, okay? Option A represents meeting the highest priority facility needs and programmatic improvements while protecting your budget. So we can see, as we look at the totals, option A comes in at $21.9 million, which is below the $24.6 million budget that this board had established. Option B represents all of the desired facility needs and programmatic improvements. So all of the additions, all of the asset protection that was being considered as potentially being a part of this. We can see what that total would be is $32.5 million. So over the budget. And this is where we talk about being strategic and surgical with our budget and our decisions. What you're seeing in option A, okay, is the priorities that Mrs. Luffy had identified through the gymnasium addition, as well as high priority facility asset protection. And if we turn the page or go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about what that is. Asset protection, the way that we're framing it, is essentially deferred maintenance. These are items that were outstanding within this facility, but had been deferred until a later date. We are now at the point where they need attention. Repair and maintenance is becoming so expensive, it would be too expensive to continue to try to repair and maintain these systems, and they're due for an upgrade. What you're seeing in the bold items, the HVAC and the air handling and rooftop unit replacement, the automatic temperature control upgrades, and the electrical switchgear and panel board replacement from 1970, these are all what we're saying are you must have. This is your building infrastructure, and they are dated, and they are slowly becoming more and more difficult to maintain. So this is what we are saying is your facility priority under your asset protection. Below that are additional facility or asset protection items. These we are placing at a lower priority, and we feel Chad, or even if the budget allows, you could accomplish over time, or we could potentially fold into the project a little bit later. Yes, Dr. Lyman.
So for the board, I just want you to remember, before I came on, there was a feasibility study done where we identified these things. We haven't spoken a lot about them recently as we've been looking at additional buildings, but this is, as Melissa says, our maintenance has done a great job maintaining these systems, but they are at the end of life, as that feasibility study indicated. And so I just wanted to let this didn't just come out of the blue. We've kind of known about these for quite some time.
Yes, Dr. Lyman.
Bold items
Yes.
look like, they look very different than the non-bolded. I'm wondering if, we talked about when we were doing the middle school project that once you have all the folks there doing the work, there's some cost savings if you just do some other projects rather than kicking the can down the road. Are these four that are below kickable down the road more so than when we were talking about items with the middle school? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think I understand what you're saying. I think if you're considering major building additions, you should also consider the bolded items because ultimately they become interconnected scope. Okay? The gymnasium bleacher replacement, the auxiliary gym floor replacement, aluminum window replacement, and the natatorium wall crack repair, those are pieces that we could potentially help Chad defer until a later date, and those don't necessarily have to be a part of this project. It makes sense to include them if the budget allows, which is why they were on the list as a priority. But if we have to shorten that priority list to meet the budget, the bold items are what we're suggesting.
Would there be cost savings since the people are already in the building doing
Yes.
the work? Okay.
Yes, there is definitely an economy of scale to doing all of these projects at the same time. Any further questions on asset protection? Looking at the high school major additions and renovations, what we've done is broken out in a budgetary perspective what those items look like. The bolded item is that prioritized building addition that Mrs. Luffy discussed. And then in addition to that, you can see the music classrooms that were being considered, the FCS and STEM classroom, as well as the office conference additions and renovations that accommodate those FCS and STEM rooms, as well as the secure front entrance addition and renovation. Now again, you can see prioritized is that gymnasium expansion, which also includes a toilet room renovation. There's an adjacent space, which is that faculty space that would also include potentially or could include a secure vestibule at the rear of the building. That brings us back to our budget. So now you can see how we got to that path A, or for option A, we had Are we suggesting it has to be the gymnasium addition? No, but we are showing you a path to budget. There is some wiggle room in there for consideration where potentially we could be in a place, or on bid day, the district could be in a place where they could elect to include more than just one addition or renovation through alternate selection.
Melissa, maybe
yes.
I missed it, but on the previous slide, you have the secure front entrance addition, but there was also the secure rear entrance, and I'm not seeing that in
Yes.
these categories.
It's included with the gymnasium,
Okay,
yes,
all right, thank you.
yes. So as we look at option A and option B and we compare the two, again, there's the path to budget. One item that I definitely wanted to highlight that we haven't discussed is the professional services and soft cost line item. So these are all of the costs associated with your construction project that are not hard construction. So your construction manager, your architect, your engineers. In addition to that, we are carrying a small budget for that potential clerks of the work that the district is considering. There is a very healthy FF&E, or furniture, fixture, and equipment budget line item that is wrapped up within that $5.2 million as well. And that brings us to the schematic options, A and B, for the comparison.
Maybe you're going to cover this, but I think you mentioned earlier that the budget was 24.
24.6 million.
So we have $1 million of sort of trying to go into an in-between space between option A and B if we wanted to. Is that true?
You do. And again, the suggestion for option A was using kind of that gymnasium, but maybe it doesn't have to be the gymnasium. Maybe it can be other priorities. That was chosen because of maybe a little bit of the preference from the building administration, but also when we looked at the needs and the desires, it was checking a lot of boxes in ways that the other building additions weren't.
And again, back to that metaphor of choosing your favorite child.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. So as we move forward into design development, I'm sure there's questions. The big question is, how will EI, SiteLogic, and K&W continue to protect the district's budget? And this, again, is where we have to revisit those ideas of being strategic and surgical. Design development will allow us to explore a lot of different options. Tonight, we're talking about establishing those building priorities. What that means for us going into design is looking at value engineering options. So we're considering things like alternative methods of construction. From an MEP perspective, we're looking at alternative technology and equipment. EI will be looking at simplified design and construction details. And on bid day, early next year, we will be providing options that can be either added or deducted from the project to get you to your desired budget number. We're also looking at maybe providing scopes of work that can be phased over time. So those asset protection pieces that were prioritized but maybe not quite fitting comfortably into the scope, that's a consideration that we've made and conversations that we've had. Other design considerations, could be, is it nice to have or do we need to have it? Those are conversations that we'll have as we move forward through design. What I have also provided is an extensive list of cost reduction considerations. So as we move into design development, these are all ways that your professionals are looking at the design of your project. For building design efficiencies, is it possible where we could reduce building size additions or maybe consider different floor to ceiling heights where appropriate? As far as site work, we'll have to review very carefully with K&W landscaping requirements and work towards minimums. In addition to that, we'll review those stormwater and design to minimize costs further. We have some structure and exterior options that we will be considering as part of the design. I won't necessarily read all of them, but steel is definitely something. It's a material that's been very expensive, and we'll look to review steel details and see if there's ways that we can reduce costs there, as well as modify any masonry unit size and installation details. If we look at interior finishes, we will consider alternative casework quantities and options. This is something that we've actually done in a very preliminary way to help reduce the cost of casework within any new additions. And flooring types is another way that we would consider reducing cost. Mechanical systems, scope and value engineering options are looking at chiller systems, chiller sizes, those different types of requirements, and ensure that, you know, any vendor, controls vendors specifically, are priced with competition, so we can eliminate sole sourcing and markups that we typically see from a sole vendor. As far as plumbing and fire protection systems, we have different ways to think about fire protection, such as considering long throw sprinkler heads to reduce piping, as well as different types of sprinkler piping within those additions. Our electrical system scope value engineering items typically just consists of different types of ways to house and form the equipment. Next steps. Today we have our discussion next meeting on 9/25. We're inviting K&W to come and provide an update on the site work as well as the athletics design. And that gets us to approvals also for 9/25, just moving forward from schematic design into design development so we can vet these designs out a little further. That takes
So Melissa, to be clear, you know, that approval is not to anything specific.
correct.
It is to move the process forward to the next design phase. So the board
is
is not
correct.
required at this point to make any value judgments on specific things to be included in the project, correct?
Correct.
This is my turn. I've got a question.
Can you,
Sorry, and I'll get closer. I have a question. When I first got on the board and we went through the questions about the feasibility study, Joe Wachter was our maintenance supervisor.
yes.
He said there were things that we could do in-house to save money. Did we do anything in-house at the middle school to save money that you didn't have to do, that we did?
Yes.
Where?
Yes. What you did in-house at the middle school to save money was the automatic temperature controls. Those were purchased as a complement to the middle school project, but were not included in the project budget.
That was it?
I'm sure, well, Chad's here. I don't know if he could speak to anything in more detail, but that project, in a very similar manner, was kind of pared down and prioritized the way that we've moved through the high school project.
So I guess for me, it's a case of the building, your designs are great. I have no problem with you do it. Whoever doing them doing a good job and everything else. But the interior things, I think I would hope that we have the people to able to do some of those things, like the towel in a room we don't have. You get paid for it. Every time we ask you to do something, you get paid, don't you? And that's reasonable. You're no different than anybody else. You want to get paid. My job is to make sure that you don't get paid for that someone else can do it. So I would like more items within the school gone through our people here at the school. And if they can't do it, then they come to you. But I think I would like them to have a first crack at it.
Absolutely. As part of that feasibility study, there was a project selection matrix that had many, many lines associated with the high school. That list was prioritized at first through Joe and then through Chad. And then what ultimately made it into your high school project are the things that were kind of considered outside of what the district could take on independent.
So Melissa, if I'm hearing you correctly, we already did that process between what could be done by, Chad shaking his head yes. So we've already vetted those projects.
Okay.
And we've narrowed it down to the ones that don't make sense for us to do, and to do as part of a project.
Reason why I asked, because I hadn't heard anything come forward about, other than what was budgeted, about anything else we need to finance or do or pay for.
So through the facilities committee, those things come up, right, Chad? Yeah, so I mean, that's where that's coming through. When we get these different projects that we can
I've
do.
been on the facility committee and I ain't heard enough about it.
So we wouldn't take and bring a few of these items into facilities and do them
Yeah.
So what
directly?
my understanding is that we've already looked at everything that we need to do, which is beyond what is in this project, and have narrowed it down to what makes sense to do as part of a project, and also have those remaining lists from the feasibility study that Chad and prioritized that could be done in-house. So Chad, can you speak to that?
He gave us a list like 4 months ago at facilities meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the ones that weren't in bold in there are the ones I said that so far that we've talked about that I could, through a subcontractor, in-house, we could probably take care of, like your B-gym floor, the natatorium, what else was on there? Oh, yeah, there we go. The gym bleachers for sure. I mean, we've already had prices on those. We can definitely do that through another subcontractor, just through us. Again, the automatic temperature control, we did that with NextGen at the middle school project. We could do that. It saved us a little bit, but not a lot as far as the ease of kind of doing it hand in hand. And then there's a lot of other things, Fred, that we haven't talked about a lot because we decided to already take them out of the list and to do in-house, like through capital projects. So we haven't gotten to them, like some of the things, the $600,000 project we just did at the intermediate school, that was on that list.
Yeah,
And
domestic water.
yeah, the domestic water piping, we did do that this year. Or last year, that was our big thing. You guys gave me $610,000 to get that done. So that was kind of the only project we did. Now, next year, I'll go back and look at that list and probably if we don't do these four, the auxiliary gym floor replacements coming up. The gym replacement at the 2 elementary schools, I'm working on that project now. That was on the feasibility study.
So, and if I could so Fred, I think it's important to understand, and Christy can back me up, our capital projects budget is not big. So we are either taking out a fund balance to do those projects because we're trying to build up that capital maintenance to get out in front of things so that we're not constantly being reactive to maintenance issues. Okay, unfortunately, that wasn't done in the past, so we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on a lot of projects.
So I agree. I understand. That's what I'm saying. I know there's a lot of.
Right, so to your point, in a perfect world, Fred, we would have a separate capital maintenance budget that we could pull things over and do in-house at a lower non-prevailing wage rate that would save the district money. However, we don't have that fund. Am I right, Christy?
Yeah, so a lot of other school districts will have money set aside in your capital reserve fund. We only have 245,000 sitting in that fund. And then, of course, we have a few, couple million in fund balance, but nothing to the list of needs that we have.
I'm not trying to get all the needs. I'm just saying there's a lot of things on it we can't do in-house. But I think I would like to know our people could try.
And what I'm hearing is we've done that to the fullest extent that we can, Fred.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Seeing those four that are not highlighted, I agree with, like, they're not, we could definitely do those in-house, and as far as the feasibility study, a lot of things is like we're hitting what we can do with the elementary schools and things like that. They're hitting the middle school and high school because, of course, that's where our major construction is going. Like, we still have the Jamesburg roof we have to think about probably next year, and that'll be done
They're not
by
doing
us.
that. They're not doing
No,
that.
that'll be done by
That's
us.
on our thing. Okay, I just want to make sure that our people, because that was a discussion when we first started this, that our people could do things in-house to save money.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense if you're considering a major project here to try and get as much as we can out of that project here, whether it's those building additions and that deferred maintenance, so Chad can address those needs at the other building because we know that those have been prioritized pretty high as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions for Melissa?
So this is on the discussion agenda. We will have opportunity to discuss during our regular board meeting. We've got about 3 minutes until that board meeting starts. So thank you, Melissa and others, for being here. I imagine you're going to stick around. We appreciate that. So everyone, you got 3 minutes until we start up.
You back? Jeez,
I'm sorry.
you volunteered? You had to.
Well, no, I volunteered.
Deduct, like add alternates.
Until I got
All of
done.
our conversations.
She wants to be here with us.
Yeah,
She got a lobotomy then.
I miss you guys. That's a good one.
The big one that we just,
Lovely.
Yes.
the nice to have would be this. So as an alternate, we put that in, see where the numbers come, but we're confident that we probably can't.
As much as we need it,
We'd like it.
it comes down, you got to have the money.
What has to go? Yeah. Even get us.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, my growing concern is the elementary schools. The elementary schools. That's my growing concern. And if you look at enrollment,
Right.
Yeah, but I knew it was up.
look at the class sizes in Nancy Grayson. For second and third grade,
Of our district.
they just bubbled again. Huge balloon of kids come in.
And none of that was elementary, that was all high school, middle school.
Yeah, because they're the last phase of our total package.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard.
What's the total cost, $30-some million?
Well, 21. I mean, it's 32 if you.
Aren't we
did
budgeting,
every-
aren't we getting a bond for that? Not the bond, 21 million?
It'll be, yeah.
But I guess my whole thing is,
two.
Oh my God, do they have that water back there?
They have water.
Yep. Do you want some?
Yes, I do.
Very hot in here. Guess we didn't pay electric bill.
That's what I asked at the beginning. Do we have the budget to turn the AC on? Mike.
Teachers require that you have to use a library book.
Excuse me, Dr. Lim. Oh, down there.
Like during study hall and stuff, people come down here and read, like look at the books. No, you can. I think like for some research papers though, your teacher like requires you to reference the book so you know how to cite it. I don't use it very often, but I know some people do.
Welcome, everyone, to this planning and action meeting of the Shippensburg, the school board of the Shippensburg Area School District. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Here.
Mr. Levi Kressler. Dr. Michael Lyman is present. Mr. Kurt Noggle.
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Here.
Mr. Charlie Suiters.
Here.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger.
Here.
Mrs. Steph Aberly. Here. Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Here.
Mr. Aryan Gaunkar.
Here.
Miss Lily Kell.
Here.
Excellent, thank you. If you'd please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. A reminder that this meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. Now, if you'd please join me in a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, actions on behalf of the students of Shippensburg Area School District and in remembrance of Walter Stouffer, who was a 1961 graduate, Patricia Deutsch, who is the mother-in-law of Daryl Barnhart, head of maintenance, and grandmother to Nathan Barnhart, technology specialist at the middle school. Also Vivian Dangler, who is a 1961 graduate, and Ray Kressler, graduate and uncle to school board member Levi Kressler. All right. The board has met twice in executive session between our last meeting and this one, once right after our past meeting to discuss some contract issues, and additionally just before our committee of the whole meeting tonight to discuss other contract issues as well as the superintendent evaluation. Under agenda approval, there is one amendment to the agenda, the addition of item 6L, which has to do with changes to the senior high school handbook. So that is on the discussion agenda, this amendment to the senior high school handbook. Is there a motion to, are there any other amendments? Yes, sir. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, discussion.
I'm sorry. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we're now to the citizens'
I guess my question is like, what is the amendment? Like, what is the verbiage to the addition of?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to read that through?
I would, because it's not, I don't have that.
You should have it on the present agenda. It just wasn't on the agenda as published on Thursday.
6L. This is the.
I'll read through it. So 6L is an amendment to the senior high school handbook. Administration recommends the approval of an amendment to page 37 of the 23-24 high school handbook under students and their guests. The current language reads, students will not be permitted to attend any dance if they have been suspended in the time period prior to the date of that dance. And then 3 dances are listed there. The replacement verbiage would read, students who have been suspended for the following offenses: weapons, drug, alcohol, controlled substances, physical altercation, or vaping within the time periods listed below will not be permitted to attend the dance held at the end of that specific time period. Students who have the accumulated 3 days or more of suspensions within that time period listed below will not be permitted to attend the dance held at the end of that specific time period. Again, this is just on the discussion agenda. We can discuss it tonight. It is not on the action agenda for this evening.
Perfect, thank you.
Does that help? Okay. Great. All right, we're to the citizens' comment period regarding agenda items. There was no one who signed up ahead of time. Is there anyone who would like to comment regarding any items on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to student reports. Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first.
All right.
High
Ms.
school
Kell.
happenings. Clubs at the high school have begun, such as Chess Club, D&D Club, GSA, and so many more. Homecoming will be held September 30th. The theme is Neon Glow Party. The preceding week will be Spirit Week for the Greyhounds, and Homecoming Queen will be announced on Friday's football game against Gettysburg. The new Sashes Minithon Club held a car wash on September 10th and raised over $500. September is Suicide Awareness Month, and the counseling department will have a table set up at lunches to create awareness around mental health and suicide prevention on Tuesday, September 12th, which would be tomorrow. This year is the first year since the pandemic where students are required to use lockers and are not allowed to use their backpacks. I will now pass the rest of the report to Aryan Gonkar.
Thank you. The students and faculty are really enjoying the new additions, especially the big cafeteria. The SAMS PTO is hosting roller skating back to school parties for students this month at Roll Our Way in Chambersburg. Clubs are being chosen by students and will begin on September 28th. These clubs will meet about twice a month this school year. PBIS is hosting weekly trivia for students to complete on Fridays, as well as some raffles for turning in important documents. SAM's Student Council will be holding interviews for 6th grade students who would like to join the council. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kell and Mr. Gonkar. Appreciate those updates. All right. Committee updates. If I'm not mistaken, based on the time of the calendar, there was not a report from the Franklin County Career Center.
No, we gave it last time.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Board committee reports. Negotiations committee met.
We've met several times, working through some current contract negotiations with our support staff.
Excellent.
Conversations are headed in the right direction.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there a report from the transportation committee?
Levi is not here, sadly, due to he's at his uncle's services.
No one else has a Mr. August?
I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay. All right. Moving on then. Is there?
Wait, excuse me. Mr. Long, do you want to give some notes?
Have some notes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just have to find where I wrote them down. Sorry. Okay. So we had some information about routing updates. We talked a lot about the idea that it has been a learning process this year because this is the first year that the district has taken over routing. Overall, we had about 96% excellent routing, and then, there were some learning curves and some improvements that have been made, and just a reminder that, busing is definitely complicated, and so we have had some, some changes and some additional I would say, again, lessons that we've learned over this first couple of weeks of school. There was still the conversation about whether or not we need an additional bus, and that is still something that's under consideration. The transportation director would like to take some more time to continue to review and revise the routes before he makes a decision or a recommendation about the need for an additional bus. We talked about some old business, which was about fueling, and there's not really an update yet, but he continues to investigate the issue on fueling. And then just a positive, which is that the transportation department has finally moved into their new offices. They all have telephones now and their own space to work in, so that's definitely a positive for them as well.
Yeah, as Mrs. DeLong is referencing, as we transition, the transportation department was double bunked at the North Morris Street office and really had to have the toughest possible situations to get the start of the school year off, but did a fabulous job, under those conditions.
So this committee meeting was about a week and a half ago, and neither one of you, I don't think our transportation director is here, but could one of you perhaps speak to the state of transportation now? And we're 2.5 weeks into school. Are we in a good place transportation-wise?
My understanding is that we continue to work out glitches that come up and respond to folks as they, bring issues to us. Some of our routes are very, very long and some are crowded, but we're working within our system to address them as best we can, and considering alternatives like whether we need to add a bus. But as we find out where kids are going, whether they're going to Boys and Girls Club after school, that's every day we get a clearer picture of what the busing needs are. And as we end out the month, I think we'll continue in that trend.
So as of now, there's no recommendation to add another bus?
Not currently. He wants to get a good handle on just what those loads are before he brings that forth.
The safety committee also met on the 6th.
Yep.
So items of discussion were that the radios have been successfully deployed throughout the district and they are working great. Camera installations at the elementary schools are complete, and the last piece being the connection to our servers, which will be taking place in the very near future. Barriers in the form of ballards and planters to help limit the limited vehicle access to the playground at SACE. The safety ballards are a recommendation from the PSP Risk and Vulnerability Report, and this purchase is an item on the discussion agenda this evening. And the ballards are a hybrid between like the target balls that you might see and some planters, and hopefully we can have some students kind of individualize them to the building and use their art to kind of do what they do on those. The drill schedules for the remainder of the year have also been scheduled. The police, fire, and EMS visited the middle school addition to give their stamp of approval and become acclimated to the new addition. And lastly, the door security, both improving our internal discipline around propping doors and the challenges of protecting them from the weather was also a topic of discussion. Along with propping of the doors with wedges and magnets was also discussed that it will no longer be tolerated. It was also discussed that Mr. August was going to contact the association to make them aware that we are cracking down on school safety, specifically the door safety when it pertains to propping them, when it's a free intervention. So we kind of need to remember to get back to the basics of school safety, which includes the securing of doors. We can have all the radios and the cameras in the world, but if we don't get back to those basics of kind of securing the doors, why are we spending this money? So I think that some of the, if you see like one of those wedges in the doors, or you see them around the doors, put them in the trash can. Get rid of them. Do not make them in a wood shop. Get rid of the magnets that you see in the doors, because it's not tolerated. Back to the basics, Safety 101. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Everly. All right, superintendent's report.
Thank you. One item tonight, just an update on enrollment from September 1st. So the enrollment at the elementaries is 1,135. Enrollment at SACE, 560. Enrollment in our middle school is 842. And our enrollment at our high school is 1,129 for a grand total with additional students at certain placements, for a grand total as of September 1st of 3687. As his wont, Mr. Stevens Dr. Stevens upstates me even more. So the actual number as of today is 3,698 students, with 6 more in the process to be joining us. So comparison, I know the board likes to look at comparisons. So this is 165 additional students from this date, from September 1st to this date, and a difference of, and in 2021, we have a difference of 304 more students. So we continue to grow.
That is an impressive amount of growth, actually. All righty, thank you. All right, we are to the consent agenda. Item 4A is approval of the minutes from the last board meeting. Item 4B is the finance report. Various reports are attached to the agenda. Item 4C is the agreement with the Vista School for Special Education Services. So as outlined in each student's IEP, the Vista School provides educational services and supports to students with intensive needs related to autism spectrum disorder. The proposed agreement is for this current school year. Item 4D is a letter of agreement for Student Assistant Program Services, SAP services. Administration recommends approving the renewal letter of agreement between Penn State Health Holy Spirit Medical Center on behalf of its Teen Line program through an agreement with Cumberland and Perry counties in the delivery of student assistant program services and to provide mental health liaison services to the district's SAP teams as outlined in the attachments. This agreement is through this current school year and is renewed on a yearly basis. All right, let's see, are there any items 4A through 4D that anyone would like to take separately? If not, is there a motion to approve items 4A through 4D?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger,
Second.
second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now we are to item 4E, personnel. There are several folks who have completed the requirements for their professional contract status. We have a few salary adjustments based on the completion of courses for additional degrees. We have also other resignations and new appointments. Is there a motion to approve item 4E?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Eberly. Is there a second?
Yeah, can I have a discussion?
Second.
Oh, it's like, you're gonna second in the discussion?
Second and then a discussion, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wolfinger. Discussion.
How many mentors are there in the school district? How many mentors are there teachers?
So every time we get a new teacher, Mr. Scott, they automatically get assigned a mentor.
I understand.
So
Didn't
I don't have those numbers in front of me.
we just approve 18?
Well, again, every time we bring on a new staff member, they get a mentor.
All right. Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, you will notice this is not a mistake. There are 0 items on the action agenda.
All right.
Might be the first time in a long time.
Texted you today thinking it was.
Yeah, 0 items on the action agenda. So that brings us to the discussion agenda. So there are several items on the discussion agenda. I would like to save item, let's see, 6K for last. 6K is the middle school and high school design approval, which was the topic of our committee of the whole. So let's save that one for a minute. I want to make sure that we give everyone time to ask questions or have any, or speak to any of the other items on the discussion agenda.
So when we were speaking, when we added the 6L to the discussion agenda, pertaining to the date, will ticket sales not be sold by the time we approve this next? Is that a?
So the dance is the 30th, Ms. Eberly. I'm not sure when the ticket sales ended. This just came in today, so I can find that information.
I just, I mean,
We'll make exceptions for anyone that affects.
thank you.
So your concern is just that someone buys a ticket and then is not allowed to go?
Or they can't buy a ticket because of the consequence. Because ticket sales already go and they're not permitted to.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
We'll make that allowance, Mrs. Eberly, if that's an issue.
Sorry, can I move on to something else?
Yeah, sure.
So item A,
Sorry, which item?
A, the land development plan. I don't really have a question about the land. You gave a nice overview of who is where now. I think that would be useful for the public to hear now that we have I don't even know the right names. The
Admin and operations.
admin and operations, right. So if you, that was useful to me, I think.
We can certainly post that on the website.
It is posted on our website. If you go to our homepage, the second one in says location of some office items. Yeah, Dr. Stevens posted it.
Yep.
Right, so if the public wants to know, they should check the website.
Yeah, you want to give us a quick summary?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Okay, so the new administration building that is located on 9318 Molly Pitcher Highway, we have student registration, we have human resources, curriculum office, superintendent and assistant superintendent, and down at the operations building at 317 North Moore Street, we have student services, which is like special education services, we have the transportation department and the business office, as well as maintenance.
So for most public who are visiting someone in administration, there probably wouldn't be a reason to go to the old administration building, which is now the operations building. Almost all public visits would be to the new administration building.
I think that's an accurate statement. There may be some testing that needs to be done through the special ed department or IEP meetings held at the operations building. We just simply didn't have enough space in the new spot to bring them over. Well, we may have some business folks that need to talk to the business office from time to time. But from my perspective, every new student or family that comes to our district is going to the new building, and every new hire is coming to the new building as well, which I think is going to be something that is a good step for us.
Is your superintendent, is your intention still to have our board meetings there eventually?
Mr. Scott, I think the back end of the conference room is still under progress. I don't know that, it would be tight in there. I don't know that we would be able to fit at that location. There was some discussion about doing some renovations at the operations building to expand out. We're not sure that that's feasible either. So we may continue to be here, or depending on what becomes available, through the building project, we may be able to move a location within this building.
Okay.
So, but I think the phrase you used in the update to the board earlier was Molly Pitcher Highway administrative building, it's the administrative face of the district now.
Absolutely, Dr. Lyman.
I got a question on 6A. Back whenever we bought the building, I questioned the sewer, the septic system, and you said that everything seemed to be working condition. Why are we getting this done now?
So it's part of the process for us, I believe, to do the paving, the last part of the install, Mr. Bard. You know, so this is all the last phase of that project.
So when I asked that question back months ago, if it comes back that you cannot do it, so now we can't pave?
My understanding is that we are in good shape to move forward in Chad's conversations with the township, and that we just need these approvals to get rolling on it.
All right, any other comments or questions regarding any item other than
So I guess,
6K?
I don't mean to go back to this like 6L item, but I don't see under the amendment where it also, like the discrepancy under also page 37 where it says like students on social probation or a suspension are not permitted to purchase tickets or attend an event for the duration of the social probation period. Like there's just some contradictory statements on that page that go beyond just that initial, like the dance verbiage. It's just that contradictory.
So the social probation, my understanding is something different. That is around students who are assigned to detentions who choose not to serve them. I believe that's been a standard practice, and that the amended part is what was new, and so that's what's been amended.
All right, any other comments? All right, well, that brings us to 6K, which is the middle school and high school design approval. So administration recommends approval to move from the schematic design phase to the design development phase for the proposed high school, middle school project and associated site work as detailed by SiteLogic and EI Associates during the committee of the whole meeting. And I know that this might seem redundant, but if Mr. August or Melissa, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. So if one of the two of you could perhaps just provide us with a short one-sentence summary of what it is that we would be voting on the next meeting.
Are you good with that, Melissa?
One sentence.
Well, I don't know, whatever.
Just to put it very simply, you'll be voting to move from one phase of design to the next. So from schematic phase to design development, so we continue to refine the district options and priorities.
Now, with those two options that were given to us, are we sort of making a decision there on one of those two options?
You are not making a decision on those two options. Those two options were provided as a way to illustrate how districts make decisions based on budget and also based on priorities.
Okay, so moving forward does not commit us to doing any work necessarily. It doesn't commit us to any particular project, but we're saying like, hey, this is the right direction. This is where we want to go. Please continue with the planning. And then ultimately, we will make a decision one way or the other, option one, option two, or some combination thereof.
That is correct.
When will you know what to cut out, or every time we say something, you're going to change, or we sit down and say, this is what we want, or is it a case of you keep moving as we move it? We move the ball, you keep moving the ball. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, that's a really good question. How do we know when to make decisions about our projects? And how do we know what is in and what maybe is out? So in is a base project and could be considered as an alternate. So as we move through design development, can't pull it up, but I did provide that schedule that has stars, right? Those stars indicate decision points. Those decision points are also aligned with estimates that SiteLogic will be providing. So as EI and K&W are refining the designs, we will be estimating what those refined designs are. And based on those estimates, just before we go out to bid, the district will have the opportunity to decide what they would consider their base project and what we can put out to bid.
And once we get the actual bids back, we will be able to know what we can afford, and within those bids, and possibly what we want to include in the final project.
That is correct.
And if I recall, that's like a January-ish timeframe?
For the second estimate update, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. We had like, I said about the back, just round ball. How long do you think we will get to doing something for the back of the building? That's the security aspect of it. Do you have an idea when we could get to that?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand your question. How long?
Before we can, we're supposed to put offices back there, and that's for security and everything. I want something temporary. But if it's going to be, you're going to build something soon, then but if I'm looking 2 years down the road, I'd rather have a temporary security system.
So if that is an addition that is prioritized by the district, we have to put together a phasing plan for construction. And that phasing plan will determine how and when those building additions are constructed. So I can't give you a necessary timeline on that, other than we've kind of allocated the next 2 summers for building construction of the projects that you saw tonight. So it could be as soon as next summer, or it could be as late as 2025.
Because our present situation, our students come to the back door, they have to walk away around the building to get in for secure.
Yes.
So that's what I was trying to come up with a
Yes.
temporary fix until that part gets done, able to be built.
Fred, that would be an internal thing that we do, would be outside the scope of we wouldn't be spending on that money for a temporary thing. And, we'll try to see what options are available and costs on it.
But the holdup was that we're going to remodel that area, and why put this temporary thing up there? We're going to remodel it.
Right. I mean, I know we had talked in facilities, or safety, I believe, so we'll explore that and see what options are available.
All right. Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank SiteLogic for the work and helping to continue to clarify for us, and also to take our, stated priorities and to put, pen to paper, so to speak, as to what those will look like. I know that's not just SiteLogic, but EI as well. Appreciate your work and help in communicating to us what is happening.
I would just echo, the cost. EI and SiteLogic are very cost conscious and are doing their level best to get us the biggest bang for our buck and the biggest bite of the apple that we can get within a limited budget. So thank you.
Thank you.
How much additional seating are you thinking you're gonna get out of the gymnasium?
I'm sorry, Mr. Bard, could you repeat that?
How much additional seating are you thinking you're gonna get in the gymnasium?
Oh, that is a good question. Do we remember? 300? Just over 300 additional seats.
Looking to be able to seat all the students in the student body, and right now the design capacity is up to 1,300. So that's what we're looking at.
So, but that's the goal, is to make it a room where everybody can fit, theoretically.
Just a reminder that the current enrollment, I was just peeking over Mr. Aga's shoulder here, the current enrollment for the high school is 1,129, maybe? Yes. We'll just say 1,130. And you're saying that we would be able to get 1,300 in the redesigned auditorium?
Oh, so we could put chairs in there too and get a few more. Yeah, okay. All
righty then. Thank you for those comments. And answers to the questions. So that brings us to citizen comments regarding non-agenda items. Again, we did not have anyone sign up. Is there anyone that would like to comment on some item that was not on our present agenda? All right, seeing none, time for board comments. Mr. Scott?
I go first last time.
I don't know, did you?
The presentation they gave was real nice. I'm a little hard about the money, but I like the design of what they're doing and trying to do. As long as I get clarification about what we can do within the house. Other than that, I don't have too much else to say.
Ms. Wolfinger?
Yeah, so today I had the honor to go over, it's been a smile all day kind of day, to go over to Nancy Grayson and help the kids kick off the new playground with a bunch of bubbles. That was really fun. It's really nice to see their little smiles as they, got to get to use a brand new, they call it their park. They don't call it playground. They feel it is their park, which I think is even more beneficial, which kind of leads me to, I guess, my concern and question, and that's more about, I know that the elementary schools are kind of our last phase for construction, and I am still, I think I talk about this all the time, but I am very concerned with our growing class sizes. In particular, if you look at Nancy Grayson's with the second and third grade, the average class size being 26 and 27, of Mr. August, I mean, what do those classroom experiences look like for our kids? And how are we addressing those issues?
We added a second grade teacher and a first grade teacher, Mrs. Wolfinger, and at present, we're doing the best we can with those class sizes. Some of the district policies set limits that we may have to look at. Quite frankly, the board has prioritized through policy what those class sizes need to be. As we continue to grow, I mean, that is something that may come before the board. But it comes down to space and personnel, and right now, budgetarily, we've done what we can for this year.
Yeah, I guess that's my concern as we're thinking through these projects. I mean, they're all priorities. Like every one of them's a priority. But I just, I still have that concern with the elementaries being kind of the last phase of the process. That's all.
Mr. Bard?
I asked way back if we ever looked about getting some more lighting around some of the schools for like night lighting and stuff. I noticed before there's some dark spots over at the middle school, and it's even, do you know if that was ever done, Bill?
It is not. That can be something we tie in. We had talked with SiteLogic about tying it into the project. Adding some like lights on the building. That can be something we can add to the.
I mean, I don't know if that's going to help anything as far as break-ins or whatever happens, but I know there's some dark spots. If you ever come up through here, there's some dark spots over at the middle school. If you just happen to look over there, there's dark spots. And
absolutely. I mean, it's something we can add to the list of.
And yeah, I mean, that all costs money, and I know that, but it's something we got to try to do. But that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Noggle?
Nothing.
Mr. Suiters?
None, thank you.
Dr. Lyman?
I would just second what Ms. Wolfinger said. My grandson, who's a kindergartner, when asked what the best thing about kindergarten was, he said the park. So thank you to all the people who sort of made that happen. I know we had a lot of donors and community help, and so good job there.
When I asked the students if they liked recess, it was unanimous. So
yeah, I'm sure. I think I should ask this when we were in the discussion of this item J, the EDR. Is that? I know that our neighboring school districts have had some attacks, cyber attack sort of things happening. Will this help with that?
absolutely, and we are trying to be proactive in that area, Dr. Lyman.
Okay. I assume that's what that was. I just wanted to clarify that. That's all I have.
Ms. Eberly?
So I also had the opportunity to attend the Nancy Grayson playground dedication today. It was amazing. And I also said, if like bubbles and kids just don't make you happy, like you are not my people. And it was definitely a fun celebration, and to just see those kids kind of upgrade from kindergarten to first to second, and so on. And just to see their excitement, just to see some familiar faces. It was definitely a feel-good moment and a celebration for the district, and to know that we've replaced the swing sets that Charlie Suter swang on when he was a kid. So we are definitely making like heaps and bounds in our facility upgrades, and some equity above, like, the west end of town and the north end of town. I know I've mentioned it before in policy meeting that it's written into policy about student involvement, and we do have student representative on the high school. But to have more involvement, like the purpose of them also being here is to be an active involvement in the decision-making process. So I would like to see them kind of be here the whole meeting to have an active role in representing the student body, as well as some of our elementary students, to hear what they're doing, what they're learning, what's important to them, and to also hear like what's on their hearts. So I'd like to maybe, see them here a little bit longer. I think that's it. Thank you.
So the other day, when I was teaching a class, I found myself saying bureaucratic milieu, and I had to stop myself and realize that nobody understood what I was talking about, and I had to back up. And I guess, with the start of school and just kind of watching from afar the kids go to school, and talking to my own kids or my own kid in school and others, it's fun to step away from like the kinds of concerns that we have to worry about. I mean, we have some tough budgetary concerns and some tough decisions to be making, but I enjoy sort of thinking about the kind of day-to-day experience that kids are having, and thinking about like the really good stuff that happens. And while we're sort of stressing over these kinds of operational issues to create the environment in which the magic can happen, the magic is happening, and it's pretty uplifting, and it's cool to watch the energy and excitement. I mean, just today, my son was coming home from shop class, although it's not called shop class, and he got to use a bunch of cool, dangerous tools for the first time in his life, and that's pretty awesome. Like, I mean, I don't have those tools in my garage, but I know how to use them. But I wasn't going to be able to teach him how to use them because I don't have them in my garage, but he's going to get to learn to do that in school. And that's just, I don't know, it's just a small example of kind of the cool experiences that our kids can have that help enlarge their worldview. And I'm appreciative of that, and it makes me happy to be a small part of the system, even though we're mostly in the background doing the really boring and sometimes stressful work. So anyway, that's my comment. Thanks for entertaining it.
Can I ask the superintendent a question?
Yes, sir.
The lady sitting out there and smiling all the meeting, who is she? Is she of the school?
That is Dr. Donat Nat. She is our director of curriculum and instruction.
Okay, because she's been smiling the whole time and sitting there, and I just wondered.
She's your fan, Fred.
All right, that brings us to information date savers. We have a policy committee meeting in a couple of days on Wednesday in the conference room. Is this the administration building, or is this the operations building?
We're still at the operations building.
All right,
I
so
apologize.
This should read the operations building. So this is the Morris Street building. September 14th, Thursday, facilities committee meeting at 4 in the conference room at the operations building. And then we'll be back here in 2 weeks on September 25th for a committee of the whole meeting at 7 o'clock and the regular school board meeting at 8 o'clock. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.